Hey everyone, welcome back to the Incredible India podcast series. I'm your host, Sam.
And I am Taylor.
So for today's deep dive, I want you to imagine something. Imagine discovering the lost architectural blueprint of, like, a major global empire.
Right, something that totally changes history.
Exactly. But you don't find it in a secure, climate-controlled museum vault. You find it hidden in a cardboard box full of dry, dusty, routine tax receipts in a library basement.
Which is, it's just wild to think about.
It really is. Today, we are exploring an incredible blog post by Madhusudan Narayanan from Five Senses Tours. It's all about a text called Chanakya's 40 Ways to Steal.
Yeah, which is just a single chapter from an ancient Indian manuscript that, completely vanished from the face of the earth for 8 centuries.
800 years. So we are diving into this thrilling archival discovery of a 2,400-year-old text that is, well, for all intents and purposes, it's a forensic accounting manual.
Oh, absolutely. We are going to look at the shockingly modern ways ancient officials were embezzling from the government treasury.
And the highly sophisticated, almost ruthless systems this text engineered to stop them.
Right. But before we even get into how these ancient bureaucrats were robbing the state blind, you really need to understand how we know about this in the first place.
Yeah, because the survival of this document is basically a miracle. We have to go back to the year 1905, to the Mysore Oriental Library.
Picture the scene, right? You have a young, incredibly driven scholar named Rudrapatna Shamasastry.
And this guy was brilliant. He had mastered multiple languages.
Oh, yeah. We are talking Sanskrit, Vedic literature, and Prakrit.
And just for those who might not know, Prakrit was the ancient vernacular language of India, right?
Exactly. It was the everyday speech of the masses, as opposed to the formal elite language of Sanskrit. Plus, he also spoke English, German, and French.
Wow. So with all that firepower, he lands a job in the palm leaf manuscript division.
Which, sounds incredibly prestigious on paper.
But the physical reality of his day-to-day was tedious, right? I mean, we were talking about mountains of decaying leaves.
It was a monumental test of patience. The library had accumulated thousands of these fragile, dried palm leaf manuscripts.
And they dry out, they snap, they get eaten by insects.
Yeah, and most of them were donated by local temples or private collectors. The specific batch he was working on in 1905 was dropped off by an unnamed Tamil Brahmin pandit from the Thanjavur district.
So Shamastry's entire job was just to sit there, sort through these incredibly delicate leaves, transcribe them, and catalog them, one by one.
Just endless cataloging. And most of these were exactly what you'd expect a local temple to donate. Devotional texts, religious literature, maybe some local poetry.
Right, until he picks up this one particular bundle.
Yeah.
And it's written in the Grantha script.
Which is really important.
Yeah, from my understanding, Grantha is essentially a special, highly complex alphabet that was used in South India specifically to write down Sanskrit.
Right. It's not something your average person was reading or writing.
So he starts translating this script and very quickly realizes that the words on these leaves are definitely not routine temple prayers.
He realizes he is holding the Arthashastra,
which is an earth-shattering deal for historians. I mean, it's basically like finding that legendary lost blueprint of a major empire hidden in a pile of ordinary tax receipts.
That's a perfect way to put it. It highlights the absolute shock of finding something so historically massive in a stack of routine temple paperwork. It completely upended global academia.
Because the Arthashastra is this legendary political treatise written for the Mauryan Empire roughly 24 centuries earlier.
Yeah, and for nearly 800 years, since about the 12th century, it had completely vanished from circulation. Nobody had seen a complete copy.
I read that many European scholars assumed it was a myth, or just heavily exaggerated folklore.
Exactly. They only knew it through scattered references in other surviving texts.
And because it was missing for 800 years, there was this massive historical misconception, right?
Oh, massive. European Indologists, the scholars dedicated to studying Indian history, had built up this entire tradition believing that ancient India must have learned its advanced principles of organized statecraft from the Greeks.
Like specifically after Alexander the Great's invasion.
Right. That was the settled, unquestioned assumption in the academic world. But then Shamasastry finds this text.
And he doesn't just read it, right? He meticulously transcribes it into Devanagari by 1909 and then translates the whole thing into English by 1915.
And overnight, that assumption is completely overturned. The Arthashastra was written before that Greek contact.
Wow.
Yeah, and it describes a state bureaucracy of such extraordinary administrative sophistication that it proved definitively that ancient India had developed its own complete and independent science of governance.
It made Shamasastry an international academic superstar.
All right.
He was admitted to the Royal Asiatic Society. He won their gold medal. Right, deserved. Absolutely. But, you have this text that completely rewrites world history, proving India had its own science of statecraft. You can't have a manual like that without a mastermind behind it.
Right, someone had to write it.
Yeah. Who actually had the audacity to sit down and map out an entire empire's bureaucracy, down to the last copper coin.
So the author is Chanakya, though he is also known in history as Kautilya, or Vishnugupta.
Okay.
He was the chief strategist and political advisor who helped a young leader named Chandragupta Maurya seize the throne around 321 BCE.
And together, they built the Mauryan Empire, which was the first great political unification of the Indian subcontinent.
Just think about the logistics of this for a second. We are talking about an empire stretching all the way from modern-day Afghanistan to Bengal.
Which is just massive. Collecting taxes and managing resources across a landmass that huge without modern technology. I mean, that requires an army of middle managers.
Oh, absolutely.
And where you have an army of middle managers, you inevitably have embezzlement, which is why the Arthashastra, which roughly translates to the science of material gain or statecraft, dedicates so much space to keeping those managers in check.
Yeah, you flip to Book 2, Chapter 8, and Chanakya titles it, with characteristic bluntness, Detection of Embezzlement by Government Officials.
He doesn't sugarcoat it.
Not at all. And in it, he details exactly 40 distinct ways a treasury official could steal from the state.
Okay, but let me push back on this for a second.
Yeah.
Why in the world would the chief strategist of a massive empire write down a highly detailed step-by-step how-to guide for robbing his own treasury?
It does seem crazy, doesn't it?
Yeah. Isn't he just handing out the cheat codes to the royal vault?
It definitely seems counterintuitive to put all your vulnerabilities in writing. But Chanakya didn't rate this chapter as, like, a philosophical musing on human greed.
So what was the point?
He wrote it as a highly practical working reference document for his royal auditors. He understood a fundamental truth of governance. As an auditor, you cannot stop a theft that you cannot first imagine.
You have to think like a criminal to catch a criminal.
Exactly. He realized that if his auditors didn't know the exact mechanics of how money could be siphoned off, the corrupt officials would always be one step ahead.
They would exploit blind spots the auditors didn't even know existed.
Right. So he essentially wrote a forensic accounting textbook to map out the entire landscape of fraud.
So if you've ever worked in a corporate finance department, or even just had to file a complicated expense report, listen closely, because you are going to recognize every single one of these ancient crimes.
Oh, for sure. The source breaks down Chanakya's 40 ways to steal into 4 clear categories. Let's look at the mechanics of the first one, manipulating timing.
Okay, what does that mean?
This involves altering the calendar itself to pocket extra cash. Ancient accountants often tracked time differently depending on the context.
Right.
So Chanakya describes corrupt clerks exploiting the difference between the lunar calendar, which has about 28 days, and the standard solar year.
Wait, let me visualize this. Let's say you have a royal foreman overseeing laborers building a new temple.
Okay.
The laborers work a lunar month of 28 days, and the foreman pays them for 28 days. But then he turns around and bills the royal treasury based on a 30-day solar calendar.
Yep, you got it.
So he claims a full 30 days of wages, pays out 28, and quietly pockets the 2 days of extra gold.
That is the exact mechanism. They were skimming the temporal margins.
Wow.
The second category he identified is misrepresenting amounts. This is where an official might collect a massive tax payment in grain from a wealthy merchant, but record it in the ledger as only a partial payment.
Oh, and then writing off the rest as an uncollectible loss and keeping the surplus grain.
Exactly. Or they would do the opposite. They'd take a massive aggregated pile of collected goods and record them as scattered, tiny individual items.
Okay, stop right there because it's blew my mind.
Yeah.
Splitting a single large transaction into many small ones, specifically to slip beneath a spending threshold that would trigger a royal audit.
It's so modern.
It is. Can you believe they were doing sophisticated corporate structuring and running phantom vendor schemes in 321 BCE? Before they even had coins with numbers printed on them. Today, the IRS and modern forensic accountants call that exact crime structuring. People do it to avoid bank reporting limits.
It really shows that human ingenuity regarding greed is practically eternal.
Yeah, sadly.
Then we move to the third category, swapping classifications. This is all about disguising what was actually moving in or out of the treasury. It often involved bartering.
How so?
Well, an official might take high-value state commodities, barter them in the market for low-value ones, log the low-value return in the ledger, and keep the premium.
Or they would misrepresent the source of the income. Like, they would take tax revenue from a really prosperous, wealthy region and record it in the books as having come from a weaker, struggling region.
Right.
That way, they lower the royal court's baseline expectations for the wealthy region, making it easier to skim off top in the future without raising any red flags.
It's a long game. And finally, the fourth category is direct misdelivery. This is just theft in plain sight, hidden by a paperwork error.
Oh, like setting up fictitious recipients,
Oh,
phantom vendors.
Exactly. Taking raw materials that were never paid for by the state and entering them into the ledger as paid, pocketing the disbursement.
Or taking materials that the state did pay for and completely leaving them off the inventory books so they could be smuggled out the back door.
Unrecorded liabilities, mismatched invoices, phantom vendors.
It is the exact vocabulary of a modern forensic audit. But knowing how the crimes work is only half the battle. How do you actually stop it?
That's where Chanakya's solutions come in, his ancient compliance department, so to speak. They were just as structural and rigorous as the crimes themselves.
He didn't just describe the problems. He engineered systemic solutions.
Let's look at his whistleblowing system. He built in direct, massive financial incentives to report fraud. If an informant provided information about an embezzlement that was currently in progress, and they could prove it, they received 1/6 of the embezzled amount as a reward.
But if the informant was a government insider, reporting on their own colleagues, the reward dropped to 1/12.
Now, why do you think he would offer less money to an insider?
Wait, I actually have a question about this. Why does the government insider get a smaller reward for blowing the whistle? Shouldn't they be rewarded more for exposing corruption from within?
You'd think so, but he's pricing in the friction. The outsider needs a massive payout to risk their neck, but the insider is already sitting on the data.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right. An outsider trying to expose a corrupt bureaucracy from the outside faces tremendous personal danger. They have to go up against the very people in power.
But a clerk inside the Treasury already has the ledgers in front of them. The risk profile is completely different.
Exactly. So he treats whistleblowing like an open market and adjusts the payout based on the barrier to entry.
It reveals a profound understanding of human dynamics and risk.
But he also knew a reward system like that could be easily abused. He built in severe penalties to stop people from weaponizing it.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, if you made an accusation and couldn't prove it, you faced severe monetary or even corporal punishment. And if you withdrew an accusation after making it, you faced a death sentence.
Whoa. Which completely removes the extortion angle. You can't go to a corrupt official and say, I'm going to accuse you unless you pay me to drop it, because dropping the accusation carries a death penalty.
Exactly. Once you blow the whistle, you are locked in.
That is intense.
Another major pillar of his compliance system was the joint interrogation principle. When fraud was suspected, Chanakya didn't just casually ask the department head what happened.
What did he do?
He mandated that the treasurer, the official who authorized the transaction, the receiver, the payer, and the clerks all had to be questioned separately.
Oh, he's essentially creating an ancient prisoner's dilemma. You pull 5 different bureaucrats into 5 separate stone chambers. If even one of them breaks or gives a timeline that contradicts the others, the whole conspiracy collapses.
And he raised the stakes. If any one of them lied or gave a contradictory story during that separate interrogation, they received the exact same punishment as the chief officer who orchestrated the crime.
Wow. It completely destroyed their ability to coordinate a false story, because the weakest link in the conspiracy faced the maximum penalty.
He also recognized that time was the enemy of compliance. To make sure nobody got too comfortable, he mandated strict job rotation.
So keeping everyone moving.
Yeah, he explicitly wrote that government servants must be constantly transferred from one department to another. He knew the danger wasn't a new guy finding a temporary loophole.
The real danger to the empire was a veteran bureaucrat accumulating intimate, intricate knowledge of a system's blind spots over 10 or 15 years. Constant rotation prevents the accumulation of dangerous expertise.
Exactly. But here is what elevates this from just a smart rule book to a work of genius.
Okay.
Despite all these brilliant systems, the whistleblowing markets, the prisoner's dilemma interrogations, the job rotations, he realized a fundamental truth about human nature.
He accepted the limits of his own system.
Right. He wrote a famous, deeply philosophical passage where he admits how difficult fraud actually is to catch, no matter how many rules you have.
What did he say?
He said, and I quote, "It is possible to know the movements of birds flying in the sky, but it is exceedingly difficult to know the doings of government servants who hide their real purpose while discharging their duties."
That is beautifully put. And then he gives us the ultimate metaphor for white-collar crime.
The fish in the water. He compared the task of detecting an embezzling official to determining whether a fish swimming underwater has actually swallowed any of the water around it.
Okay, that is the absolute perfect description of modern white-collar crime.
It really is.
Think about it. If you rob a bank, you are an outsider taking something that isn't yours, putting it in a bag and running away. It's a visible, violent disruption of the environment.
Yeah, everyone notices.
But white-collar criminals, they are entirely surrounded by the very asset they are stealing. They live in the water. Moving the water around is their actual job description. So when they take a little sip for themselves, it is completely invisible to the naked eye.
Exactly. The theft is physically indistinguishable from their daily duties. And because direct detection of that sip is almost impossible, Chanakya relied on what we call presumptive redundancy.
In plain English, what does that look like in practice?
It means if a department's revenue suddenly drops but its expenditures simultaneously rise, the auditors don't need to find the specific missing gold coins. They don't need to catch the fish drinking the water.
They just look at the numbers.
The mathematical anomaly itself is treated as presumptive evidence of embezzlement, triggering an immediate, intense investigation of the officials in charge. The math is the proof.
He also used what later commentators called the four upadas, which were proactive risk assessments.
Long before a crime ever occurred, officials would be secretly tested. Agents would evaluate if a clerk could be tempted into disloyalty by a fake bribe, if they were susceptible to fear or intimidation, vulnerable to romantic flattery, or willing to join a fabricated conspiracy.
He was stress testing his human infrastructure the same way you would stress test a bridge.
Exactly.
And when someone failed that test, or when a massive fraud was finally uncovered, she had a surprisingly modern view of the victims. He mandated a public proclamation inviting anyone who had been cheated by the embezzlement, say a merchant who was overtaxed or a laborer who was underpaid, to come forward and claim compensation from the state.
Which is a level of administrative empathy and accountability you rarely see in ancient texts. The goal wasn't just restoring the king's gold to the vault. It was about restoring public trust in the institution of the state.
We started this deep dive with a librarian sorting through dusty palm leaves in a basement, uncovering a text that rewrote our understanding of history. And we end with a masterclass in human psychology that feels like it could have been written by a Wall Street regulator yesterday.
It really does. It raises a really important question, something for you to mull over long after you finish listening. Think about the massive, complex organizations you interact with today. Governments, multinational corporations, global financial institutions. Even with all our modern software, our blockchain ledgers, our forensic algorithms, and our massive corporate compliance departments, are we ultimately still just trying to figure out if the fish is drinking the water exactly as Chanakya was 2,400 years ago?
The technology changes, the calendars change, the currencies change, but human nature remains stunningly consistent. And for those of you who are as fascinated by this history as we are, you can actually go see this history for yourself.
Oh, yeah.
You can visit the Oriental Research Institute in Mysore and stand in front of the exact palm leaves that Shamasastry translated in 1905. Or you can explore the ruins of Chanakya's ancient capital at Pataliputra, which is modern-day Patna.
It's a tangible connection to an incredible intellectual heritage, a reminder that the challenges of governance we face today are thousands of years old.
If you decide to travel to India, we have a recommendation. 5 Senses Tours organizes tours across India, which are immersive cultural experiences. You can email contact@5sensestours.com. Note 5 is written as a numeral in contact@5sensestours.com or WhatsApp 2 +919 845 677 446.